Part 102. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 1011. Chapter 1011, The Bad Woman Who Pretends to be Pitiful. There was a photo that captured the overall situation and was published in the weekly. Yi Suiao not only saw the bride and groom, but also Bai Ye, who had been staying by Yuan Ran's side. These scenes aroused Yi Suiao's unwillingness, and she ran away again, that is, now. The truck kept driving forward, and she didn't know where she would be taken. When the car stopped, she found that the driver had left. But the door at the back was locked and she couldn't get out. When someone came to move the goods, she took the opportunity to escape. The person transporting the goods saw something passing by in his car, but it was gone in the blink of an eye. He thought he was hallucinating. After Yi Suiao escaped, she felt like she could see the light of day. She had no money and no mobile phone with her, because the mobile phones used there were equipped with tracking devices. She did not dare to use them and never thought of taking them out. But looking at her outfit, because she was going to entertain guests inside, she was dressed well and had some jewelry. Yi Suiao took off those things, made herself even more embarrassed, and went to find Bai Ye. It's just that she waited outside B's villa for several days without seeing anyone. She exchanged her things for some food, and planned to go to the company to find someone. Yi Suiao now pretended to be pitiful and showed sympathy. She waited outside for a whole day until B got off work. But Kitano was answering the phone when he came out. Yuan Ran followed him, wanting to wait for him to hang up the phone and run up to talk to him. Just when Bai Ye was about to get in the car, Yi Suiao rushed up and shouted, "Brother Bai." Even though Kitano hates the familiar sounds and names, he cannot forget them soon. He turned around and saw Yi Suiao. Seeing her current embarrassed appearance, he frowned and asked, "Why are you here?" Yi Suiao trotted towards him and wanted to grab his hand, but Kitano avoided it with quick eyes and hands. "Yi Suiao, if I don't want to trouble you, you should avoid it now. You run out and seek death." Bai Ye frowned and spoke in a very bad tone towards her. But Yi Suiao no longer cares about face, and only hopes that she can win Bai Ye's sympathy by relying on her past friendship. "Brother Bai, all the mistakes are my fault, but I have never thought about hurting anyone. Brother Bai, I understand that you love the people you like, but this is not of my own free will. I have been really having a hard time these past few months." Yi Suiao did not tell B the truth about selling her body because she was afraid that B would dislike her. However, regardless of whether she told the truth or not, B didn't have the patience to interfere with her affairs. "What I owed you back then, and Ran's kidney will be repaid. Don't pretend to be pitiful in front of me. Even if I care about kindness, I will only think about how to treat An Ran better. Thank you for reminding me how much she suffered because of my negligence." Sneers and ridicule are enough to hurt people thoroughly. But Yi Suiao no longer cares about face issues. She has had enough of the days she had lived before. She just wants Bai Mi to be soft even if she kneels down to beg. "Brother Bai, you can't do this to me. Don't forget that we were back then. If we step back 10,000 steps, I am also Yuan Ran's sister. You can't do this to me." It's okay if Yi Suiao didn't say it. Once she did, B thought of the suffering Yuan Ran suffered because of Yi Suiao. "Yi Suiao, what you said will not make people sympathize with you, it will only make me think of the harm your existence has done to Yuan Ran." End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 1012. Chapter 1012. My wife is too thin. Bai Ye finally did not sympathize with Yi Suiao. Yi Suiao was unwilling to give in. She followed B and saw with her own eyes that B took Yuan Ran back to the community, and the two of them never came out again. That's it, only now did I know that Bai Ye no longer lived in the villa, but lived with Yuan Ran. Yi Suiao suddenly felt very unwilling. Obviously, I was the one who accompanied you through those 5 years. You have become rich, but you use your current achievements to pamper the woman who abandoned you. Yi Sueo was unwilling to give in, really unwilling. She has always believed that the kidney transplant was performed without her knowledge and was not her intention. Kitano should not put all the responsibility on her. But Yi Sueo ignored her ugly heart. If she had known that only Yuan Ran could save her life, would she really not have agreed? Of course. She worked hard to live, and when the opportunity was presented to her, she would never refuse it. It's just that some miserable people are always unwilling to admit that there must be something hateful about being pitiful. Yuan Ran found a part-time job in a nearby shop. Without asking for a salary, he earned 3 meals a day. Yi Sueo began to guard outside Yuan Ran's community again, and saw the two of them entering and leaving together. Sometimes Kitano would take Yuan Ran to eat somewhere near the community, and he was very gentle to her. "Beye, have I gained weight recently?" Stature is an issue that almost all women are concerned about. Yuan Ran put his hands around his waist, feeling a little more voluptuous than before. Of course, she is absolutely not fat. Beye is still very good at talking. "How come? My wife is in the best shape, don't worry, just eat more food." As he spoke, he gave her meat food. "Eat more, supplement your nutrition, and you will lose weight." Oh, Yuan Ran believed it and ate the meat and rice that B gave her. When others see this, they will feel that B is pampering Yuan Ran. Yi Sueo felt even more uncomfortable after seeing it. Moreover, she also heard Yuan Ran talking to Beye about going back to Yu's house to meet his parents. "I made an appointment with my mother before, it's this Friday night." "No problem, don't worry Ran, I will definitely behave well and refresh your mother's impression of me." Okay, don't worry, just eat more and you will lose weight." Ever since Yuan Ran asked if she had gained weight, Kitano told the truth that she was thin, leaving Yuan Ran dumbfounded. "B, you put vegetables you don't like in my bowl again." "No way, I just want my wife to eat well." "Don't be picky about food," Yuan Ran warned him. Kitano immediately took the dish he didn't like and put it into his mouth. "What my wife said is the imperial edict. I have a very naughty boyfriend, which is quite funny sometimes." But all this sweetness made Yi Sueo crazy with jealousy. Yuan Ran felt that God was very unfair to her. "I obviously didn't do anything wrong, but you still want me to suffer this, but they can live happily." Obviously she and Yuan Ran have the same father, but they live very different lives. They even want to rob men. Yi Sueo was very unwilling. She thought about Beye's meeting with MRSU. "Since you are unkind, don't blame me for being unkind." Yi Sueo took a day off to find MRSU. It was difficult to contact MRSU at first. She would not hesitate to reveal her identity directly. Is Yuan Ran's half-sister. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lu Kixi. Chapter 1013. Chapter 1013 Kiss Outside the Home. I am Yuan Ran, my half-sister. When MRSU heard this, she almost knocked over the teacup in her hand. With those words, Yi Sueo successfully made an appointment with MRSU. Even after hanging up the phone, Yi Sueo's voice lingered in MRSU's ears and could never stop. Yi Sueo made an appointment on Saturday, the second day after Kitano went to see MRSU. There is a reason why Ye Wei didn't go looking for someone immediately. She has to wait to see the jokes made by those people in B, and wait until Yuan Ran brings B home and gets the consent of his parents before suppressing them all. That will be the most satisfying time. Friday night. Yuan Ran is going to take B home. This time B has put aside his past grudges, including the original hatred towards MRSU. He really thought about being with Yuen Ran, and he could let go of his past grudges for Yuen Ran. This time, Kitano was dressed appropriately and prepared many gifts for MRSU according to Yuen Ran's reported preferences. They were all valuable things. Kitano is rich, but he is not rich suddenly. Although he is not a scholar, he has the aura of a successful person. In terms of appearance and personal abilities, MRSU is really impeccable with Kitano. Especially MRSU still remembers what Yuen Ran said in her ear that day, "He knows my physical condition." It means that even though he knew that Yuen Ran was infertile, Kitano still wanted to be with her wholeheartedly. Although MRSU still had some grudges in her heart, she compromised at this time. However, for the sake of her daughter, she is not very satisfied yet, but she still accepts Kitano. After the meal, MRSU pushed Yuen Ran away and talked to Baye straight to the point. "Although we and Ran look smart, we are really simple in terms of emotions. I was the one who was sorry for you in the first place. No matter what, you can't hurt me, daughter." B nodded. "What is in the past is the past tense. I will not care about it anymore. Auntie, you can rest assured that I am absolutely sincere to Yuen Ran and there is no falsehood at all." MRSU observed B's words and deeds. This man was no longer the childish boy he was before, but he was still strong-willed and single-minded. At this point, she has no reason to object. "Since Enran has chosen you, let's live well. I hope my daughter is happy. Even if you don't say it, I will do it." In any case, this dinner to meet the parents turned out to be a good one. In order to make MRSU feel more at ease, Yuen Ran stayed at Yu's house that day. But before leaving, the two of them went out together for the reason of seeing off guests. Yuen Ran sent B outside the door. A little further away, where no one could see him, B directly pulled him into his arms and kissed him. The sweet atmosphere between the two people spread all around, and it was only a short 100-meter journey, which took 10 minutes. "Of course, I'm leaving now." "Walk." "I'm really gone." Of course you don't try to save me." Mr. Bay also wanted to act cute and pretend to be aggrieved. Yuen Ran rubbed his forehead and said, "Let's go quickly." "Okay, good night, wife." Baya left, but before leaving, he also stole some incense. Yuen Ran touched the corners of her mouth, feeling sweet. It's just that they didn't notice that in a dark corner not far away, Yi Sueo was hiding there, mad with jealousy. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lu Kixi. Chapter 1014. Chapter 1014, Your daughter's kidney is in my body. Yuen Ran stayed at Yu's house that night, but when she got up the next morning, she learned that MRSU had already gone out. The madam seems to have made an appointment with someone. When Yuen Ran asked, the housekeeper answered her like this. Yuen Ran nodded, "I still have some things to deal with, so I will go out soon." In fact, she only stayed at Yu's house for one night, and she still had to go back to her home today. After leaving the villa, B's car was already waiting outside. After Yuen Ran got in the car, she smelled a faint smell of smoke on Bayet. If her nose had not been sensitive and careful, I might not have been able to detect it. "Yuen Ran, how long have you been here?" Baye replied casually, "Not long ago, I just came." Yuen Ran couldn't believe it. He had clearly finished smoking a cigarette, and the smell of smoke was so weak now, it must have been at least half an hour. She just wanted to tell Kitano, "Actually, you don't have to come here specially." Baye turned his hands on the steering wheel and said, "Come and take my wife home." "I wish she could do it." "Say something useless." Yuen Ran scolded him, but her tone contained a hint of tenderness and sweetness. The way the two of them get along now is like living as a couple. Besides, the date that Yi Sueo and MRSU have arranged to meet is today. In fact, When MRSU heard Yi Sueo reveal her identity, she wondered who this person was, but she was in a high position and was unwilling to express to that person how much she cared about the past. But at that time, Yi Sueo definitely told her that what she wanted to say was related to her daughter Yuan Ran. MRSU was actually in a bad mood after holding it in for so long. Arrived at the appointed private room, MRSU saw the back of a young woman, or rather a girl, when she entered the door. Ahem, MRSU deliberately made a sound to attract her attention. Yi Sueo turned around and saw MRSU herself, with a strange smile on her face. You are finally here. Don't talk nonsense. Tell me what you have tried so hard to see me. Even though MRSU was extremely curious about her at the moment, she would not expose her thoughts in front of a junior. It's just that Yi Sueo came this time just to cause trouble for the Yu family. There was no need to deliberately reflect on MRSU's attitude towards her. I originally thought that MRSU might be angry or unwilling when she saw me, but I didn't expect MRSU to be so calm. Angry, unwilling, she's just an unknown illegitimate daughter, how can she deserve my attention? Shut up, don't think that you can curse people at will just because you have a lot of money. Bang, MRSU slapped the table and stood up, already angry. Who are you, and you dare to go against me? If you make me dissatisfied today, I will kick you out right now. Yi Sueo's eyes turned and her tone became colder. You don't need to rush me, I will leave by myself, but before I leave, I still have a lot of truths that I want to share with you, MRSU. For example, I have to thank you first. His daughter, the eldest daughter of the Yu family, Yuan Ran, risked her life to save her. What do you mean? MRSU frowned, and the wrinkles on her forehead were clearly filled with anger. Yi Sueo pretended to say oh and asked, don't you know, MRSU? One of your daughter's kidneys is in my body at the moment. How can it be? Don't doubt it, this is absolutely true, and someone personally sent your daughter here to save me. Do you want to know who that person is? Tomorrow, the 15th, red envelopes will be distributed in the welfare group. Kaibao with a fan value of more than 2,000 disciple can join the group, 1450160019. Privately stamp the administrator 3.5 years old in the group to enter the welfare group to receive red envelopes. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lu Kixi. Chapter 1015. Chapter 1015. And Ran was imprisoned. I can tell you that your daughter didn't do it willingly, but I still had to get the kidney. Yi Sueo told MRSU in a firm tone, because, B did it himself to save me. Yi Sueo's every word is Zuji, and it doesn't look like she is lying. MRSU felt a surge of anger in her heart. But after all, she is a businessman who spends many years in the mall. Even if she is suspicious, she cannot just believe the traitor's lies. The matter involving Kitano did make her suspicious, but she couldn't lose face in front of an illegitimate daughter. MRSU asked, why should I believe what you say as a nobody? Yi Sueo had already prepared an answer and told her, if you don't believe it, the person who handled my medical records in the hospital and my consumption records can be verified. It was Kitano who was always helping me. The news brought by Yi Sueo was just to attack B, but the seeds of doubt were planted in Madame Yu's heart, and since it was related to her biological daughter, Madame Yu could not ignore it no matter what. MRSU immediately sent people to check the hospital records. It turned out that during Yi Sueo's illness and hospitalization, all the expenses and other expenses were in Kitano's name. That period of time. Looking back on that period, Yuan Ran used the excuse of needing to rest and travel, but in fact it was because he had removed a kidney to nourish his body. MRSU didn't believe Yi Sueo. She even went to check up on Yuan Ran's physical condition, and then called Yuan Ran's secretary to talk. Only then was she convinced that Yuan Ran was really missing a kidney. As Yi Sueo said, that kidney is now in Yi Sueo's body. Boom dash. Yi Sueo, who asked you to come to the door automatically? No matter what your intention is when you say those words, you can't even think about it easy. She hates it. That man contacted that Li Ru and betrayed her and the Yu family. Now there is a here to hurt her daughter. MRSU is really angry this time. Not only does she have to punish the unknown illegitimate daughter, but also the man who hurt her daughter. She doesn't even want to have an easy time. Yuan Ran returned to her community only 2 days ago when she was called back by an urgent call from MRSU. On the phone, MRSU did not explain the specific reason, but hoped that she could go back to Yu's house immediately. Nowadays, Yuan Ran's relationship with her mother is relatively close. As soon as she hears that something is wrong with MRSU, she rushes back without asking. "Butler, is my mother at home?" The housekeeper replied, "Yes, miss, the lady is waiting for you in your room at the moment." "My room?" MRSU wondered why MRSU was waiting in her room, but she couldn't think too much at this time. Yuan Ran hurriedly went upstairs and opened the door. As soon as he took 2 steps, he heard a bang of the door closing behind him. Soon she also heard the sound of the door lock turning. "Why?" Yuan Ran turned around and slammed the door with his hand, but no one responded outside. She tried to twist the door handle to make sure that the door was locked tightly from the outside. "Who's out there? Who is it?" At this time, MRSU's voice came from a small trumpet-shaped object beside the door. "An Ran, stop knocking. I asked people to lock you in." "Mom, why are you doing this?" "You ask me why, I would like to ask you why you are missing a kidney." Tomorrow, the 15th, red envelopes will be distributed in the welfare group. Kaibao with a fan value of more than 2,000 disciple can join the group, 1450160019. Privately stamp the administrator 3.5 years old in the group to enter the welfare group to receive red envelopes. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 1016. Chapter 1016. Don't do it to yourself. Mom. When Yuan Ran heard the question coming from MRSU's mouth, her whole heart was in confusion. MRSU snorted coldly, and you could feel how angry she was. "I believed you could take good care of yourself, but you ended up doing this to yourself." "Mom, listen to my explanation." Yuan Ran banged the door a few more times. MRSU's voice came in very clearly from the small speaker at the door. "I don't need to hear your explanation, just tell me directly, is the kidney you are missing in the body of Yi Sueo's illegitimate daughter?" Yuan Ran was silent because she did not expect that MRSU would suddenly reveal the truth that had been concealed for a long time. MRSU, who did not receive a response, was almost convinced, but she still wanted to hear her own admission from Yuan Ran. "Let me ask you, is that true?" Yuan Ran gritted his teeth and said yes. But she still wanted to fight for it. "Mom, please open the door first, and I can explain to you." "Okay, stop knocking," MRSU told her directly. "I have already found your hospitalization records and real physical examination report form. I don't need to hear those false words from your mouth." At this moment, MRSU had her own set of thoughts. That is, the reason why Yuan Ran hid it from her was to protect the man who hurt her, so MRSU would not believe what Yuan Ran said now. She had the evidence in her hand that Yuan Ran had indeed been raped. Except for the evidence of a kidney. And now that Yuan Ran admits it personally, it is no longer false. But Yuan Ran wanted to know why MRSU suddenly discovered this matter. "Mom, why do you know this? Who told you?" "How do I know? The process is not important. What is important is that I already know it now, and you still want to hide it from me." "Mom, I didn't mean it. Everything she did at that time was not to irritate MRSU, who had just recovered, but also to prevent MRSU from being sad as a mother. MRSU knew that Yuan Ran was a filial daughter, but the key point that MRSU was grasping now was, that half-hearted man in B forcibly took one of his daughter's kidneys for another woman. The most ridiculous thing is that her daughter also wanted to help that unfaithful man, kept it secret, and now he even said that they want to be together? How is this possible? MRSU will never allow a man who has hurt her daughter to become the son-in-law of the Yu family. But now MRSU didn't want to have a dispute with her daughter about Kitano, so she locked him up directly. MRSU said, "Anran, my mother is very angry that you concealed your physical condition, but she feels sorry for you more." MRSU calmed down her emotions for a while, and her tone was much gentler than before. "In the past few days, you can just reflect in your room. Mom will not harm you." But MRSU's words made Yuan Ran feel very uneasy. She asked, "Mom, what do you want to do? I'm already well. I know I shouldn't hide it from you and make you worry. I'm sorry, but you first let me out." The sound could be heard from the speaker, but MRSU paid no attention to her. I only heard MRSU ordering the people guarding outside, "Prepare everything the young lady needs, but she must not be allowed to step out of the door." End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Luke Hixie. Chapter 1017. Chapter 1017. Send her back to the casino and black shop. Yuan Ran was locked up like this, and a signal jammer was placed near the room, so she could not contact the outside world through the internet. She couldn't even make a phone call or surf the internet. She was even more worried about what Kitano would do if he couldn't find her. Well, at that time, she received a call at home and returned to the Yu family without telling anyone else in advance. Now the only people who know her whereabouts are the people in the Yu family who have met her. Of course these people from the Yu family obeyed MRSU's orders, so how could they help her inform the news? Yuan Ran was locked in the room and was very distressed. The way he looked now seemed to be back to the time when he was imprisoned 5 or 6 years ago because he refused to break up with Kitano. She was here, and she had no shortage of food and clothing. She was even given books and casual games to pass the time. But she was anxious. The small speaker at the door that can transmit messages was specially pressed by MRSU. It seemed that she planned to show off her beauty there for more than a few hours, more than a day, or even. She couldn't determine the time, but she knew that according to her mother's personality, she would have to settle the score with Yi Sueo. She is not worried about Yi Sueo, but she is afraid of involving Bei Yet. "Is there anyone? Please answer me." Yuan Ran ran to the door and spoke into the small speaker. She didn't know if anyone was watching outside, but she didn't hear any reply. She thought about plots like those in TV dramas, and it was almost useless to pretend to be sick, because it was not her menstrual period, and she couldn't use the cold as an excuse. Although Yuan Ran has a cold personality and looks relatively strong, she is actually just unapproachable in appearance and has a stronger personality. But in terms of mobility, she is really a weak woman. It was impossible to fight and break in. She just hoped that MRSU would come back and make it clear. Yuan Ran took a deep breath and said into the small speaker, "I know someone is outside. If you hear what I say, contact my mother immediately and tell her that I have something important to tell her and I want to talk to her." Yuan Ran stood by the door after speaking into the small speaker. There was no movement outside the door at first. After waiting for a while, she heard a response, "Miss, we have conveyed what you said to Madam, but I'm sorry, Madam said we don't have time to see you now." MRSU really doesn't have time now, because she is looking for trouble with Yi Sueo. Yi Sueo only thought that by revealing some truths and weaving some lies at the same time, it would arouse MRSU's anger and prevent B from being with Yuan Ran. This was Yi Sueo's purpose. She was all about causing destruction. But this time, Yi Suiao really stumbled. Who is MRSU? Is she the kind of woman who just listens to a few words and is completely led by the nose? The strong women in the shopping mall are naturally the most calculating and rational. So MRSU will look for evidence at the beginning, and then when she is sure that the facts are correct, she will start to put pressure. Yi Suiao, you brought this to your door yourself. MRSU felt very angry at the thought of having a kidney dug out of her daughter and planted in the illegitimate daughter of the heartless man who betrayed the Yu family. She not only checked about the hospital, but also found out about the suffering that Yi Suiao suffered in the gambling shop. But those sufferings did not make MRSU feel distressed or pity, but made her feel disgusted. Since he is a person who escaped due to debt, just send him back. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lu Kixi. Chapter 1018. Chapter 1018. The chick tastes good. No, don't send me back. When Yi Suiao had not had time to see the drama of Yuan Ran's break with Beiye, the disaster befell her. She didn't expect that the people who asked her to pay back the money at the casino, and the two men who specialized in training women at the black shop, would suddenly appear in front of her, looking as fierce as if they wanted to peel off her skin. Please, I will change the money slowly, don't take me back. Yuan Ran hid in the corner and struggled, but those fierce-looking men had no mercy at all. People from the black shop get angry when they see her. You girl escaped privately, and my two brothers were found guilty of poor guarding. Not only were they fined by the boss, but they were also almost fired. The anger in his heart was vented from his mouth, and the two people looked at Yi Suiao as if they wanted to tear her into pieces. Yi Suiao was so frightened that she repeatedly begged for mercy. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I don't dare to do it anymore. I will give you all my money. Please let me go. Yi Suiao still doesn't know that these people came here after MRSU reported the letter. She still has a bit of luck in her heart, hoping that these people can let her go. But whether it was because she was entrusted by others or for personal revenge, it was impossible for these people to treat her well. Let you go? Tisk tisk, how much dignity do you think you have? Let it go if you say let it go. Do you know how much our third brother has suffered because of you? Yi Suiao had been taken care of in a black shop and knew the methods of these people, so she was frightened when she saw them. She couldn't think of any other way besides begging for mercy. Yi Suiao huddled in the corner and begged for mercy. I'm sorry. I already know I was wrong. I will compensate you. I will compensate you. You're going to compensate? What are you going to do to compensate? The man with the scar on his face said something harsh to her, and she was immediately frightened. One of the two brothers suddenly came up with an idea. Brother, last time I heard a guest say that the chick tastes good, why don't we try it too? Upon hearing this, the scarred man suddenly felt that this proposal was a good one. You're right. Anyway, we all suffer because of this woman. It's better to feel refreshed before sending her back. That's free. Brother, you are right, I mean the same thing. Hey hey hey. As soon as the two men settled their attention, their expressions that were fierce and cursing just now turned into expectant and obscene expressions. Yi Suiao, who was huddled in the corner, clearly heard the conversation between the two brothers. Her heart was beating wildly, and she had no way out even if she wanted to. Yi Suiao put her hands on the ground and ran to the side. But before she could even run to the door, she was pulled back by the two brothers who reacted quickly and hugged Yi Suiao's waist tightly. You still want to run away, but you really can't shed tears until you see the coffin. They pushed Yi Suiao hard to the ground. They felt very happy when they saw Yi Suiao falling to the ground and frowning in pain from the impact on her back. Yi Suiao, I advise you to stop struggling and serve the two brothers well, maybe we can be gentler to you. Yi Suiao has now been completely imprisoned. When she was about to give up her struggle, she heard a horrifying conversation. "Brother, you come first or me now? Why should you and me be so clear-cut? Why don't we just come together?" Yi Suiao was so frightened that she almost died. "No, you can't do this to me." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 1019. Chapter 1019, being used as a tool to make money. Shut up and serve the two brothers well. When the two brothers are happy, they can be gentler to you. The two brothers from the black shop were already interested and couldn't wait to press Yi Suiao under them to vent their anger. Yi Suiao cried while struggling. The two people were happy and even told her a few words. "Who told you to provoke people you shouldn't provoke? I can only say that you deserve it." Yi Suiao, who was on the verge of despair, heard these unusual words, grabbed the scarred man's hand and asked, "What do you mean by this? Are you saying that someone deliberately harmed me? Who is it? Who is it? Who have you offended and you don't know what to do with it? They are all and they deserve it." Ah! Those two men didn't know how to be gentle to her at all, and Yi Suiao was tortured miserably. "Who wants to harm me?" Yi Suiao wanted to find the answer from them, but it was impossible. "You have to take responsibility for what you have done. You can't blame us." Ha ha ha. The wretched man had something to say, but he still followed the rules of the road and didn't say much. Yi Suiao was unwilling to give in, but she was still taken back to the black shop. She herself owes a huge amount due to gambling, and she will never be able to pay it back in her lifetime. She can only be used as a money-making tool by people in black shops. Yi Suiao was unwilling to give in, but she was also afraid of death. In order to live, she would not choose to be relieved even if she suffered all the humiliation. Ever since the two black shop brothers had a taste of her, they couldn't help but look for her in private many times. Now, in order to survive, Yi Suiao did not resist as before, but used the charming methods she had learned to get the two brothers closer to each other little by little. Yi Suiao has become smarter, and her life in the black shop has become easier. It's just that she hasn't forgotten who pushed her to this point, and she is still full of hatred in her heart. Of course, no matter how obedient Yi Suiao is, it is impossible to be released at this time. Besides, Yuan Ran has been locked up at home for 3 days. During this period, B came to see someone, and MRSU gave him a reason to send him away. But how could Kitano believe such a false reason? Even if Enron is busy with work, he will not be unable to receive a single call. Beiya thought that since MRSU didn't look anxious, it meant that MRSU knew that Yuan Ran was safe at the moment. MRSU didn't want him to communicate with Yuan Ran, and she obviously regretted what she had agreed to last time. "Auntie, you just agreed to the matter between Yuan Ran and me not long ago, why did you suddenly change your mind?" "Huh, you ask me why? What qualifications do you have to question me, a mother? I am the only person in the world who loves Yuan Ran the most. Who do you think you are?" Whenever MRSU thinks about the people the kidney is related to, she becomes very angry. Since Beiya asked and couldn't hide it, she made it clear to others directly, "It's because of you that you insisted on saving that Yi Suiao, and my daughter Yuan Ran almost lost her life in vain. Do you think I will still save her? Would I leave my daughter to a man like you?" Hearing the question, Kitano suddenly realized. It turns out that Auntie, you already know about that matter. The kidney transplant was known to MRSU, so it was reasonable for her to be angry. B tried to explain, but he always felt that something was wrong. It was her poor protection of Yuan Ran that caused irreparable consequences. Beiya internally blamed himself, so he was unable to refute MRSU's accusations. "I tell you, you will never marry my daughter in your life. End of this chapter. My green plums are super sweet. Author, Lukixi. Chapter 1020. Chapter 1020. I am physically handicapped. I tell you, you will never marry my daughter in your life. Mrsu was so angry that she directly said harsh words to Bayet. Bayet clenched his fists. That incident was because I failed to protect her, but I swear that similar accidents will never happen again in the future. If possible, he would rather trade his own life for you and Ran's well-being. But Mrsu has made up her mind at this moment, there is no future, and I will not allow danger to always exist around my daughter. If another accident happens, no one can bear it. Baya knew that Mrsu must be angry at this moment. No matter how he tried to defend himself, he just kept repeating the fact that Yuan Ran was injured in Mrsu's ears, so he took retreat as an advance and did not bother Mrsu for the time being. He believed that Mrsu would never harm his own daughter. If Mrsu's anger cannot be relieved by seeing her today, he will just have to endure it. It's just that neither B nor Yuan Ran knew that there was a difference between their ideas and Mrsu's. B blamed himself for not protecting Yuan Ran. Yuan Ran thought that Mrsu knew that the incident was related to B and objected in anger. Mrsu believed that B wanted to save Yi Sueo, so she acquiesced in those people's actions against Mrsu. A poisonous hand. There was originally a thread between them, and Yi Sueo was the spark on the thread. If you are not careful, a spark will start a prairie fire. Baya tried to ask the Yui gang to inquire about Yuan Ran's current situation, but Mrsu was determined to give Yuan Ran a long memory this time, so she turned away everyone who wanted to see Yuan Ran. Although the reason for the refusal was very euphemistic, the result was that it was very firm. Yuan Ran has no freedom in the room and cannot contact the outside world. She lacks everything else. But she never gave up her struggle for a day. Mom, how long do you want to lock me up? It has been 5 days now, and she has not stepped out of this bedroom for almost a week. When Yuan Ran asked the same questions every day, Mrsu took the trouble to tell her, as long as you make the right choice, I will release you immediately. Yuan Ran took a breath of cold air. Because she knew that Mrsu's so-called right choice was to say goodbye to Kitano again. Mom, what happened in the past is in the past. What we can control is the future. There is no future for you to be with a man who almost killed you. Mom, I can make the right decision. You are too young and don't even know what a human heart is. Mrsu is really disappointed with men, so once there is a problem with B, she will get into trouble and only remember those who have hurt her, and it is difficult to forgive. Then what do you want me to do, Mom? Your daughter is a physically handicapped person. What do you want me to do? Yuan Ran asked questions continuously, as if with pain in his eyes. She took 2 steps back and walked away from the small speaker at the door, and suddenly the sound was lost. Mrsu, who was standing outside through a door, also felt very uncomfortable. Once she didn't hear any movement, her heart also started to flutter. Open the door. Instructing the doorkeeper to unlock the door, Mrsu pushed the door open and saw Yuan Ran sitting on the floor, with her hands lying on the edge of the bed, as if she was asleep. Enron. Daughter. Mrsu shouted twice but didn't hear her answer, and she felt a little panicked. Safe. End of this chapter.